Today we're talking about Thunderstone Advance, but this is not a review of the game per se. What we're going to talk here is about the changes that Thunderstone Advance has been upon the other versions. This is an expansion to the original game, but more than that, it's kind of like a reboot. It progresses the story, and it changes the card artwork and all that. So we're just going to talk about the changes. You can check out this link somewhere around here to see the real review, okay? So anyway, I'll talk about the changes first, and then we'll tell you what we think about them. Okay. So the biggest change that you're going to notice when you open the box is that there's a board now. This is great. Love this board. Even if you play the epic Thunderstone variant that I like, this board is still very handy for you because I would put all my heroes here, my weapons here, my items, you know, it was like they made it for me in a sense. But this board is here, and there's actually two sides to the board. This side has the original dungeon with your darkness. By the way, it's called darkness, not light penalty anymore. It's called darkness. And it shows the light penalties for the different sides of darkness. But this side is the wilderness, and it's actually an easier way to get into the game because there's 4 ranks, but each one you only lose 1 point per darkness penalty. So it's actually lets you jump into the game easier. And when I played with people for the first time, I always use this side of the board. So this is a nice change, but you'll notice that there's some other changes. One of the biggest changes is the regular cards. Here we have the old militia next to the regular, and you can see a couple things here, well, several things. For one, the design of the new cards is changed quite a bit. The money is still there, but the strength now has a new icon, which makes it easier to see, and the money is a nice big money bag icon, also easier to see. You also see that the militia and regular have different special abilities. He has attack +1. He has physical attack +1. Well, attack is physical attack, but they just did that to help differentiate it between magic attack. And this guy also, if he has a polearm, draw a card. So you would never really want to use the militia over the regular. So the regular has completely replaced the militia. Militia are gone, I would say, except for different cards that affect the militia, maybe. In the corner down here, you'll also notice that the militia costs 3 to upgrade to a hero. The regular now only costs 2 experience to upgrade to a hero, which makes that much more something that I could see happening more often. So the militia has changed into the regular. It also mentions the level at the top and what kind of hero it is. The torches, here's the old torch and the new torch. That's basically the same, but you'll see they moved the light penalty from down here at the bottom up here in the top. And again, the new design for the cards is really nice. Now, they changed the weapons in the game. No longer do we have the lowly dagger, but instead we now have the long spear. And you can see that they're essentially the same, except the long spear gives more money. It's heavier to carry, although the militia can carry it, so it's not a big deal. And it's physical attack +1. But other than that, they're kind of the same, but it's just, it looks better. I don't know. I guess it's not that big of a deal. But this next change is a big deal. No more iron rations, which gives someone a strength of +2. Instead, we have a Thunderstone shard. It does the same thing, gives the strength +2, but has a spoils effect. There are spoils in this game, things that you can use when you're in a dungeon, and when you're in a dungeon and you use a Thunderstone shard, you'll get an extra experience. That's a big deal. Not to mention that a Thunderstone shard is worth a victory point, so you'll think twice before kicking it out of your deck to replace it with something else. So those are the changes in the basic cards. The basic setup is essentially the same. The new cards in the deck have nice backgrounds so that they're easier to tell. Like, for example, these have red, and so you can see their items and weapons, and everything is nicely delineated at the top. Some of the heroes have changed. I believe, you know, you still have your thieves, and they still go up to level 2s and 3s, but there's no longer a ranged. Instead, we see this person who's now a ranger. So that's another change to the game. There are now no longer diseases. Instead, there are curses in the game, although you'll see at the top it says curse/disease. That's because they are essentially the same thing. The new randomizer cards are nice because they tell you, for example, here, this thief has physical attack. She benefits from cards in other players' deck. This fighter has physical attack. At higher level, his attack increases significantly. So the randomizer cards are nice. They tell you a little bit about the cards when you're drawing them. Then there's a brand new set of cards called Familiars. There's a spot on the board for them, and once per game, when you defeat a monster, you can claim the top card of the Familiar deck. Now, Familiars are a really neat addition to the game. If you'll notice, each Familiar here has a 0 XP, 3 XP, and 6 XP. When you get him in your hand, you place him in front of you, and you keep him in front of you until you use him. When you use him, he's put in your discards, and then when he comes up again, you can stick him out in front of you until you use him again. Depending what experience you have in front of you, shows which abilities you can use. And it doesn't actually use up the experience, but the amount you have determines which ability. So, for example, the Imp here, when you're in a village, you can get an experience by using him for no. If you have 3 experience in a dungeon, you can switch to adjacent monsters. And in a dungeon for 6 experience, you can discard 2 cards to draw 2 more cards. While the Battlehawk gives you 2 gold in the village, gives you +1 light in the dungeon, or draw 1 card in physical attack +1. The Pseudo Dragon, you can buy 2 cards in the village. It gives you +2 light in the dungeon, or magic attack +2 in the dungeon. And all of them are very useful and give you kind of the ability that you are different. Now, one of the biggest changes to this game is a new action that you can take on your turn called Prepare. If you remember from the original game, you could go to the village, go to the dungeon, or destroy a card permanently out of your hand. Now, if you draw cards, you are allowed to say, you know what, I want to keep these 3 cards. You put them on top of your deck and you discard the rest. Then next turn when you draw cards, you're going to draw these cards plus new cards. And so if you get, for example, that really powerful character, but you didn't get any weapons for him to use this turn, well, you stick them back on top of the deck and then you can draw them. So it's a really good way to get into the dungeon faster. And so those are basically the main changes. There's another few minor changes. When your strength goes to 0, your heroes aren't destroyed anymore. And there's other terminology changes, but those are the major changes in this version. All right, the changes.
Little donkey action going there.
The changes. The first one is the artwork and the layout of the cards. Huge
plus.
Well, this is one of the best covers to a board game, I think, ever.
Yeah, totally awesome looking. I mean, that just guy, definitely don't want to see him in a dark alley at night.
So, I mean, but the cards themselves, the artwork is pretty much similar to Thunderstone as it's been before, but the layout just made a lot more sense. Mm-hmm. And all the numbers and saying, okay, that's money, that's strength, it just made sense. You didn't have to say, oh, which number is which again? Mm-hmm. I always have to explain it to new players. The board. Love having a board.
Very much so.
Wow, that board just makes things better. And I like the double-sidedness of it because you can play the easier game or the harder game, and it's up to you. So those are all minor changes. Let's talk about the biggest changes of all. To me, the 2 biggest changes that this game brings is the familiars, and the prepare action. So the familiars. I think the familiars is a really cool idea.
Yeah, it is. One of the ones that I took, the familiar that I took most recently was the guy who gives you an extra experience point whenever you went to town. Now, whenever you take that guy to town, you get the extra experience point, but then you have to put him back into your deck. So,
yeah, but still, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's huge. It really helps you level up your characters a lot faster. And the prepare action is something that Tom used a lot more than I did in our most recent game. So I didn't really feel that enamored with it, although I do like to have that option because there are some times where you just have, 3 or 4 really good cards, and they would really work well with cards that you know are coming and you want to wait, but earlier you couldn't, now you can.
Yeah, but you could probably go back to a Thunderstone game in the past where you had that great guy. There's the one character from the original Thunderstone he can use as many weapons as possible.
Right.
He's a great character, but you'll always draw him and get no weapons.
Right.
And then you can just say, okay, we'll put him back on, and I'm sure the weapons will come.
Exactly.
And to me, that makes the game more strategic. Yes, you're giving up your turn now, and it also alleviates a concern I have about the game where I didn't like that the big monsters came out early, but you can actually defeat these big monsters now just by kind of saving and waiting and get the cards.
By preparing.
And yeah, by preparing. And as Sam said, a lot of the cards let you draw cards and kind of wage you know, kind of hedge your bets to some degree, and you might be able to do it. And the monsters, the trophy monsters, I like that. The ability to get something that the trophy monster will give you in the future. And then the basic changes. The new regular versus militia. The new long spear versus the dagger. And the biggest change of all, that Thunderstone versus the food.
Yeah.
In the original game, food was almost always the first thing I got rid of. I would look at it and say, food, you know, I can increase the strength of my guy so that he can hold a better weapon, but big deal, I'll just get a stronger guy.
Yeah.
Now, it still can do that, let you hold the stronger weapon, but you can, that gives you the extra experience point, which is
points in the dungeon.
Major.
Yeah, huge.
The experience thing is there's so many cards now that give you a chance to get more experience, and the familiar lets that experience come in handy. So, I don't know.
I think there's a lot of stuff here where they just really, I don't know, maybe they were listening to people. People were sending them suggestions or something, but they really had a lot of good changes. AEG did a really good job here. I
don't see any changes here that I disliked.
No, yeah, that's it. They're all positives.
But not to mention, they didn't really oversweep it so much that you can't mix the old stuff in. You really can. And it does look a little weird, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. No. I mean, you just...
All the card backs are the same. I mean, they're slightly different, but that's just because of different printing. But, I mean, I don't think there'd be any problem with mixing these two, and the board's compatible with all of it. So,
if you're watching this, you probably already own Thunderstone or you've played it. If you played it and you like it and you never got a copy, then this is the base set. Start with this, definitely.
Yeah.
Feel free to go back and buy the old ones, but start with this one. If you already own Thunderstone and you're looking for an expansion, this is the one to get. Don't get me wrong, I like the last Thunderstone, the Dragon Spire, that other base set. There's 3 base sets now, the original Thunderstone, then Dragon Spire, then this one. But Towers of Ruin is just awesome. Fantastic. I love it. I can't say enough good things about it. I'm already pumped about playing it again. So, major 2 Towers of Ruin up.
2 Towers of Ruin up.
That's the name of the game.
I'm going to give it 2 stinking nasty looking genies up.
Oh, also this game has undead ents, and any game that has that is
just cool. It's like 2 Towers Aftermath. There's a whole bunch of dead ends running around.
That's right. Maybe that's awesome. What this is. This is an alternate
the Towers
Lord of the Rings world.
Towers of Ruin. Hey, hey.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find the latest board game news at Dicetowernews.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Fun Again Games, the world's best game source. Fun Again Games has over 5,000 games available. Check them out at funagain.com.